2026ರ ಟ್ರಾನ್ಸ್ ಬಿಲ್ಲನ್ನು ನಾವು ವಿಡ್ರಾ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಕೇಳ್ಕೊಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀವಿ.
ಈ ಬಿಲ್ಲಲ್ಲಿ ಸಂಸ್ಕೃತಿ ಐಡೆಂಟಿಟಿಗಳು ಮಾತ್ರ ಇರಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ.
So we are going to oppose it, we are going to talk about it.
What does it mean to be told you cannot define who you are? What happens when the state decides your identity for you? The Transgender Persons Protection of Rights Amendment Bill 2026, introduced in the Lok Sabha, is at the center of a growing national debate. The government says it strengthens protections, but critics argue it does the opposite. Let me explain. They say the bill dilutes the right to self-identification, introduces medical gatekeeping, and narrows the very definition of who qualifies as transgender. Many believe it undermines the spirit of the landmark NALSA judgment, which recognized gender identity as a fundamental right. There are also concerns that the bill could exclude the most marginalized, weaken community support systems, and roll back hard-won constitutional protections. Protests have already broken out across the country, with activists and members of the community calling the legislation regressive and demanding a rollback. To understand more about this, we are joined by two voices from the community: a trans woman who is a content creator and actor, Prakriti Soni, and Kanmani R, who is also a trans woman and an advocate practicing in the courts of Tamil Nadu.
Thank you so much for both of you for joining us today and being the voice of the community here. So the first thing that I would like to ask you both is, what are your main objections to this transgender bill that's been proposed?
Of course, it's the taking away of the self-identification that we have been enjoying as our basic right, which was given to us by the NALSA judgment. I think transgender is a gender identity, and a gender identity is an extremely personal thing to each and every human being, and it can only be self-identified. I don't think any blood test can tell me what my gender is. Anything biological cannot define what I feel or who I am as a human being and what I associate with socially and psychologically, right? So that being taken away from us, and a lot of bureaucratic, the lens that we will be looked at, the bureaucratic lens that we will be looked at because of the medicalization of our identity. I think these are the two main issues that I see of the bill at the moment. Yes.
Amani, would you want to add something?
Yes. See, according to me, they have completely redefined trans identity in India to now throw out trans men, who are going to be one of the most principally affected by this, because there is only now trans identity means Arvani, Hijra, Jokta, Kinnar as per this new bill, and they have very strangely included someone who is forced to be transgender as also a transgender person, which is very, very strange. And they've also thrown the word trans woman and genderqueer out of this definition, which means on the ground, how you're going to convince anyone, whether it's your employer, whether it's your education institution, whether it's your own family, how are you going to talk to anyone, who has, let's assume, very less understanding about trans identities, and they're going to look at it bureaucratically, looking at say if this bill passes, they're going to look at the act and say, oh, the word you're mentioning does not exist in that definition. Oh, have you undergone hormones? Have you undergone surgery? As Prakriti mentioned, they've medicalized it. And the other principal problem with this entire bill is they have criminalized the support systems that we have. If the bill passes and becomes an act, the first persons that are going to be affected are all the Hijra, Arvani, Kinnar, Jokta, and the other social cultural identities, gurus, because giving any kind of space or shelter to a trans person, whether they are a major or a minor, is going to get very heavily criminalized. Anyone who does not have an understanding of how ground reality works in terms of trans people will look at it like a general lawyer will just look at it and say, oh, they have just criminalized, forceful kidnapping and abduction, right? What's the problem in it? The problem is, boss, such provisions are just used to criminalize any trans person wanting to exercise their right. Like all the NGOs, CBOs, in fact, the shelter homes that even the governments are open, everyone is now going to get drawn into a criminal law, process, and 10 years to life. That's serious. I mean, an abuse of a trans person is still 6 months to 2 years as per the bill. They have not amended that. So tomorrow, if I get abused or Prakriti gets abused, it's still 2 years. And the accused can walk out from the police station with bail at that level itself. But if someone is forced to be transgender, according to the bill, then that person who forces them, who's the accused, can get 10 years to life and a fine of 2 lakhs to 5 lakhs. That's huge. So who are you protecting under this law?
Also, can you tell us that how does the law currently define transgender?
So the law currently defines transgender as any person whose gender doesn't correspond with their sex assigned at birth or gender assigned at birth, which includes trans woman, trans man, genderqueer. It also includes, with some opposition because it's not correct, is person with intersex variations. It also includes sociocultural identities. So there are 3 buckets: individual identities. So this one, person with intersex variations, and sociocultural identities. Person with intersex variations have consistently also, a lot of intersex persons have opposed both the act and the bill, in the sense that they've said all intersex people are not trans people, boss. And 2019 May that act came in. We are sitting in 2026. Even now, you're not caught up. And you're putting all intersex people and trans people. Essentially, you're looking at us from our body. You know, when I was in law school, and I did, it took me 3 years. I kept putting in everyone's heads that I'm trans and who is trans and all of that. And at the end of the 3rd year, there was a play that was made. And you know what is the opening scene? A child is born with ambiguous genitalia. And the play was about trans people, but the imagination was of intersex people. I mean, as an intersex child. I mean, that is not the same. In Hindi they say तुम पैदाइशी ट्रांसजेंडर हो या ट्रांसजेंडर बाय चॉइस हो या हार्मोन का झमेला है. I'm sorry to use these very triggering conversations, but that's exactly how people talk to us. So,
And this bill
yeah.
also adds to it, while not addressing that each is a different category altogether, each is a different
Correct.
person altogether, rather than intersex being trans or trans being intersex.
Correct. There are
Yeah,
some people who may see themselves as trans.
Yeah, but that's
You
their
are not,
self-identification that someone
you're not giving
chooses
them
to
any
do
rights.
that.
You're not giving them any rights. You're just extending whatever benefits that trans people can access to all intersex people. Great. But what else? They have been demanding so many other things. That is principally their problems. You're not addressing any of it.
And also, this bill clearly says that the medical board has to issue the certificate. Like, you have the process, there is a bureaucracy layer to the medical board as well as
Yeah.
the DM. And Prakriti, you have a transgender ID card already. So first, can you tell us
yes.
what was that process like to get the current ID card that you have?
Oh, I think it was very, very painful. I could only get my transgender certificate and the ID card after like having applied for it 2 times. It got rejected twice. I was very, very confused as to like why it's getting rejected. So first of all, according to the act in 2019, there's supposed to be a portal, right?
Yeah.
So this portal was created so that we do not have to like directly interact with anyone and face discrimination when it comes to like these processes. So we are supposed to upload all of our documents there. For example, say if somebody has a gender dysphoria certificate, they upload it there. Somebody has their hormones, like prescription, a letter from their endocrinologist, if they have gotten surgery. So those documents and an affidavit. So all of these things I had uploaded on the portal. And every single time I would upload it, it would get rejected. Like, so if I'm, for example, uploading it today, within the next 3-4 months, it's taking. First of all, it's not supposed to take that long for it to get either rejected or approved. So I was genuinely very, very confused. I'm from Bhopal, but I'm still living in Bangalore, right? So even though I applied from Bangalore, I'm supposed to be applying to where I reside permanently. So my application would go to say the Office of Ministry of Social Justice based in Bhopal. and it got rejected twice. It took a year and a half, and after that, I had completely given up because I did not want to take like the conventional route of the way people used to change their name and their gender on other documents, other legal documents, for example, the Aadhaar card, PAN card, etc. I wanted to go through the legal route that exists right now because I didn't want any problems to arise later on. That, oh, you do not have a transgender certificate, how are you changing anything? First you get that. I didn't want any of that problem. So finally I decided to go back home and like figure out what's the issue. Somehow I got the address and the number of somebody who used to work at the office of like the office at Bhopal of Ministry of Social Justice. And I asked them, where is the office? Where do I need to come? And I just showed up there. When I showed up is when I found out how clueless they were. The person literally said, like this is the person who's assigned to do all of this.
Go through
He
those
was,
certificates on the
yes,
portal.
yeah. So so I told him, listen, I'm transgender. I have applied for my transgender certificate, and he said that how am I supposed to know? You need to come here and tell me that you have applied. How will I know that there is an application? I was like, but you have the portal login ID, right? I was like, yeah, I have, but like, how will I know? And I was like, you're supposed to open it in order for you to see that there is an application. And then he was like, okay, yeah. So once he opened it, and this happened right in front of my eyes, I'm there. I see so many applications which are just left. And once they are left, I think they get rejected automatically by the system or something like that. And that's why it was continuously getting
Rejected
rejected.
twice in your case.
Yeah, exactly. And it had already taken 1.5 years. I had done everything in my power to apply and to like keep doing whatever was needed. In fact, I spoke to NGOs. I was like, I don't know what's happening. What is it that I'm doing wrong? Turns out that I am not doing anything wrong. And I'm sure this is the experience of a lot of other people also who have applied. So I finally had to go there, tell him that you need to open, at least just open it, okay, to see what the application looks like. He opens it. He's like, okay, but what do I have to do? And then I was like, but you know, right, what you're supposed to do. It was like, yeah, हमारा sensitization हुआ तो था, like it had happened, and some training had happened, but I don't remember it. So literally, because I have read the act, right, myself, I told him, okay, so this is what the act says. This is what you need to do. Check these things, and approve it, get a signature from the magistrate and upload it here. He was like, okay, I'll do that. Then I had to apply for a revision. I literally sat on his neck until he approved my first transgender certificate. Then I applied for a revision, then and there. And this is how I eventually got it. Now, I'm sure that not a lot of trans people will be okay with going through this process also, right? Because not everybody has the time to come here, and the whole point of a portal being in place was so we do not have to like interact with these officials directly and face any sort of discrimination. So right now I took that step to like just go inside that room and be like, what are you doing, where is my card? And I knew it, so I could educate him about the fact that this is what you need to do, this is the process, please follow it for other people also. Now, I do not know if that's happening for everybody else or not, but I'm sure the cards are not getting issued the way they should be. For sure.
So it took you almost 1.5 years to get the card itself, though you had the documents in place, though you had a medical document as well to show for.
Yes.
And Kanmani, what about you? Do you have a transgender ID card as well?
No, I don't. In the sense, see, I opened up as a trans person in 2016, and quite ironically, that was the first time. That was also the year when the Government of India introduced their bill, the Transgender Persons Protection of Rights Bill, that then had multiple iterations, multiple changes, and then became the 2019 Act. That wasn't so back then I started getting involved and started helping out the communities, and there was a lot of problems within that bill. See, a lot of us it has taken me 10 years to get to this point where I could even move out of my parental home and, get my own place. And quite ironically, since I'm a lawyer and I'm a trans woman, pehle to, if you're not married and if you don't have a government job or an IT job, people don't want to give you a house, right? I'm talking from the perspective as a resident of Chennai. And then if you're a lawyer, people are like, get out. We are not interested. You will talk too much rights. Next, if you are a single woman, no ways. Trans woman, they are like, are you really sure you can afford? And they're like, if I say yes, and they're like, no, resident welfare associations will create a problem. So sorry, and all that. And it took us months of searching and searching and searching to get us a house. And now I independently live. And I'm 30 now, right? And even now, my parents are not, they've not come to a point where they're able to accept my identity, or even if they're able to accept or at least understand. They understand it. But they don't have, I mean, the idea is where do we live? We don't live in an ideal society, right? So people around us won't support us, right? We also live in rented accommodations where it may not be very supportive. Right now, even for example, to even give a media interview, I don't put my photos out there that easily, even though I'm quite open in the high court and in district courts as a trans woman. If I wear a sari also, they will call me hi sir, and I get a little pissed off after 3 years of appearing before like judges and court officers and fellow lawyers where I'm called hi sir, hi sir, hi sir, and after a point it just gets to me. So I do want to apply for a trans ID card. I probably maybe in the future want to go for medical transition, but for situations like mine where parents where we want to wait for various different reasons. Or we don't want the ID card also. Maybe I'm not saying for myself, but for other people. Right? Where or we want the ID card, but we don't want to undergo hormones or surgery for various reasons. I mean, what is the understanding of this bill? Let's think about it. Would trans people who are as old as our grandmothers or grandfathers, right, who have multiple comorbidities, are you now asking them to undergo compulsory, 50, 60-year-old trans persons to undergo hormones and surgery? And where is the money going to come from for them? Where is how are they going to run around? Because when we are sitting and drafting a bill across India, you have to think about everyone.
Yep.
And you're asking, this bill sets up a 5-stage process. You're saying first, get a castration or a hormonal surgery. 2, because that's part of the definition. Second, you're saying apply to the DM. Great, fine, apply kar diya. And we know what is the parinam. Just now, Prakriti talked about 1.5 years of delay. I have talked to multiple DMs, multiple social welfare officers in multiple collectorates. I've even filed cases for trans persons who have not gotten their ID cards for more than a year. And what I do know is that we know how it goes. Then you have to go to the medical board, and you're burdening public healthcare, boss. That surgeon sitting over there, plastic surgeon. How many district government hospitals have plastic surgeon? How many district government hospitals have trained trans healthcare related plastic surgeons? Like, they know what trans healthcare is. They know who trans persons are. Then how many government medical hospitals have endocrinologists? How many of those endocrinologists have even like administered hormones to trans people to they know that, okay, this is the hormones that usually trans people take? How many district government hospitals have psychiatrists and psychiatrists who have trained in trans healthcare? Currently, medical curriculums don't even know anything about trans healthcare. That is like for the last 1.5 years, I've been working with doctors and medical professionals as part of certain organizations, training as a legal resource person. And trust me, doctors across the country, many, many, many doctors are clueless.
So this would add to the barrier when medical board comes into the picture. Like you're mentioning that there is no sensitization regarding trans healthcare currently in India at the level.
And even if someone even if someone is okay going through all these stages, and after that, what you're doing is you're giving so much discretion to the DM, district magistrate or the district collector, saying they can actually say no, even if the medical board says yes for the ID card. And they can send it to another medical expert. You're giving so much power. What is a trans? It's a Transgender Persons Protection of Rights Act. The power should be in the hands of the trans person. You're taking the power away from the trans person and putting it in the hands of the surgeon, the district magistrate, the medical board, and other medical experts, which is absolutely not defined. Abhi, imagine a trans person who is a daily wage laborer. Many trans persons are daily wage laborers. Several trans women are sex workers. Several trans women are begging on the streets. Are you now expecting them who's living in some village to actually go forcefully get themselves hormones and surgery, which are their private medical decisions, and then expecting them to go to the medical board? I mean, and how many trips is it going to take for them to get the certificate? No medical board is going to give them certificate in one meeting. So, and why should anyone go and strip before a medical board and prove themselves to be trans? Just because you are satisfied that they are a real trans person. There are so many like me who don't have the option. Is the government going to come and fix my relationship with my parents? No. That is a decision that should be left to me, no? Where is the right time when I want to avail something? They are not letting me do that.
So this is the same part where the self-identification that the NALSA judgment had passed goes away because of the bill that a lot of critiques have pointed out already. That you, like you mentioned, you are a trans, you identify yourself as a trans, but if this bill is becoming an act, then people can ask you proof, which would mean literally proof by your body to say that you are trans.
Correct. And see, when I earlier said that trans men are being thrown out, let's imagine the perspective of trans men. Trans men are assigned female at birth, right? Most of them are assigned female at birth. Society views them as women and forces them. Well, we know what's the situation of women in conservative families where they are forced to get married quite early, etc. And their education is stopped. There are a lot of barriers, child care that happens, all of that, right? They have to or then fight with their family, fight with their prospective partner or actual partner and say that I'm a trans man, then get out of that situation and actually, find acceptance. And the upward mobility for someone female as in birth is extremely less. So trans men and trans masculine people is extremely less. How many shelter homes are even there in our country? And how many spaces can they go to and explain? Now you have thrown out trans men also. So, which means if you walk into a district magistrate's office, let's assume very basically, they are going to ask, "Aap hijra ho kya?" And nothing wrong with that. But the point is, not all of us are hijra people. This bill is medicalizing us, and the other hand, asking us to be hijra people and also criminalizing hijra people. So, who wins in this bill? Who are you really protecting? Nobody is being protected. Hijra Arvani groups are not being protected. Intersex people are not being protected. Trans women and trans men are not being protected. Gender queer people are not being protected. Who are you protecting then? I don't know.
And also, since both of you are quite educated and you knew what was going on with your body, like it took a while for you to accept, and your whole journey was different. But there are a lot of young ones out there, or even older ones, who are still in the transition of identifying themselves, learning about themselves. What does this bill do to their mental health? And what does it even mean? Like you mentioned, that it could criminalize the ones who are supporting transgender, the community as well. So, what does it do to younger ones?
I think that definitely it creates a atmosphere of a lot of hostility, if I would say so, because um, when a bill like this is introduced and the entire community is like speaking up against it, a lot of people who and you can definitely see this directly affecting kids on, say, social media, where everybody who has a differing opinion about trans people has now gotten like a green light of sorts, you know. So it almost promotes like a culture of where people who have like a differing opinion, they're saying, yeah, सही हो रहा है, बिल्कुल सही हो रहा है, ऐसे ही होना चाहिए. We need to, आजकल तो कोई भी बोल देता है. And the whole thing about कोई भी बोल देता है, it creates a lot of mistrust within the community, and the generation that's coming after us is going to be only scared about the fact that, even our government is not on our side. If our government is not on our side, then and and our community in itself is feeling so divided at the moment, where you have differentiated us on the basis of like which socio-cultural community you come from, if you're a trans man, trans woman. Because when I think about queer people or trans people in general, see us as like one. But these differentiations and uh, are brought in by the bill. So that's what it does. And I think it'll only worsen the mental health of, say, a young trans person who is still not decided what they are, or what and how they are going to live their life as a trans person. Because everybody comes from such varied experiences. Not everybody realizes it or has the courage to come out, say, early 20s. A lot of people come out much later. Um, so it just makes like a environment of a lot of hostility, I feel, around trans identities. And I think people are only going to become much more scared, repressed, and the confidence that they should feel in a government and in the state for them to feel protected within the law, I think that's going to go away. And I can see that happening already, because all of us are, I wouldn't say we are scared. We are like, we are angry, but somebody who does not know how to exercise their right to like even speak up is obviously going to feel threatened and scared, right?
See, I would add and say that, sorry for exceeding time, but I would add and say that, see, sorry for sounding emotional, but when I opened up, and a lot of times the questions asked of me by my family, by everyone was, why now? We didn't seem to see that you were trans, quote unquote feminine when you were young. You were slightly feminine, but we didn't think that you were,
That was a
trans.
kid in the naughtiness. Usually that's how it's taken up, that
Yeah.
like just a childhood thing.
So, I said, look, maybe I don't know about other people, but I don't want to die as a man. And we don't know how life is going to be. I don't want to die and continue to, perform for everyone else and live for everyone else, but not even live for a moment for myself, right? Live the life that I want, and see the happiness in other people, living the life that I want, right? And this bill is putting us back in that genie where, please go, don't live as yourself. That's what it's saying. We will decide for you. Sounding like quite like some of our non-accepting parents.
Exactly.
Thank you. Thank you so much to both of you for sharing your journeys with us and telling us what's wrong with this bill. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Akshita.